Hi Guy, welcome to episode 15 of the AMIGArama podcast. I'm your host Lorfarius, and for this week we're going to be taking a look at the game Jungle Strike. Now, as always, before we jump into that, I thought we'd have a look at some Amiga news. Now, strangely, I couldn't actually find any, so it's been a bit of a strange week. I mean, every single week I go across numerous sites and there's not really been much that's caught my eye I thought I'd bring up, but luckily I do have some stuff to talk around because I've had quite an active week with my Amiga 1200 setup. Now, I'm sure you're aware if you listened to the past episodes, I recently had the motherboard done, recapped and put it all back together and it's all working perfectly. But one thing I did do, I only had a 4 gig compact flash card as a hard drive. And I'd installed Classic Workbench myself, but it was really cramped on there and I couldn't really do anything extra because, you know, there's other games I've been buying and things and some homebrew stuff as well I'd like to try out, as well as demos. So I thought I'll take the plunge and I'll pick up an 8 gig flash card off eBay. Now, this one came with OS 3.9 installed, but some of the requirements said that it needed, well, at least an 8 meg card, which I did already have, but it needed 3.1 ROMs. So, I mean, I only had 3.0, so I ended up going to Amiga Kit and buying a set. I think they were about £15, and they literally arrived on last Monday. And I've never pulled chips out before like this, and I was watching lots of videos online and stuff, and what also a lot of people were doing is they were like putting the hand on the motherboard and getting a flat-headed screwdriver and then slowly sliding under the chip and plucking it out. And I was looking at the motherboard and I just think that looks incredibly risky. And I started pondering around and again went back to even thinking there must be some sort of like chip tool. And lo and behold, there was. It cost me like £1. And it's looked like a pair of tweezers with 2 little hooks on the bottom, slot straight under the chip, squeeze, tug out and pop out it came straight away. I mean, it was so easy compared to if you've been plucking it away with a screwdriver. I think if you can't get your hands on a tool, but I mean, the prices and stuff these days, you know, of course you can. It's the ideal way to go. Now, I put the chips in, didn't have any problems. I mean, I did have to give them a bit of a wiggle when it leaned in on one side. It's not incredibly complicated to do. It must have taken me about 10 minutes in total, and that's because I was being incredibly careful, but popped them in, put my new card in, all booted up perfectly without any issues. I've been chuffed to bits with that. Now, one thing, so that's the next part of the story, because one issue I was having is that the expansion card I've got apparently isn't compatible with the setup I'd been pre-made and bought. So, and I was talking to the seller and he says, I don't think there's much you can do. And then he recommended a couple of other cards. And I've been thinking for some time now that I need to get like a better card. And anyway, I started asking on Facebook groups and one chap came forward, a guy called Zeb Elwood, and I was chatting back and forth with him because he'd realised I got this 8 gig card and he'd asked if he could have a copy because he wanted to try it out himself, and we were discussing this and he says I can possibly have a look with you. And then because he completely knows his stuff when it comes to Amiga DOS. I know absolutely nothing about it. Never even heard of it or used it before when he started taking over and giving me clues and hints and things to type in and commands to try. We must have spent one evening, I mean, oh God, it must have been 3-4 hours going through this. And you know, he let me phone him and I'm just taking so much time. And we were up till like 10:30 that night messing with this. And then eventually we got it working and it was all booting fine. So a big thank you to Zeb. He's around on the Commodore Amiga group over on Facebook. Fantastic guy. And yeah, it's great when someone in the community just comes forward with that. He was happy to do it because he'd never seen this sort of problem before. And I was just glad that finally I could play some games. So for the first time like ever, I've been able to play Theme Park AGA. I've been absolutely chuffed to bits because that's one of my favourite classic all-time games. But yeah, I mean, that's it as far as the news goes, I'm afraid. So I'm afraid we're going to have to move on to the rest of the episode. Now it's time to move on to this week's game. Now, you might be wondering why I've picked Jungle Strike so quickly after I did Desert Strike, and to be honest, after recording the episode, I just went back to Desert Strike. I just couldn't stop. I mean, it's an absolutely awesome game and I was determined to complete it. And luckily, because there's only like 5 missions and it's not as difficult as it should be, I was able to actually complete it. And by the end of it, it was just brilliant. I was half tempted to go and start it again, but then I thought, no, there's a sequel out there. I should just switch over straight away. And to be honest, I'm glad I did. And the reason I'm doing it so quickly is because, again, Desert Strike is such an awesome game. So if this is based off the same engine, you think it's going to be as good, surely. Now, this was published by Electronic Arts, as I'm sure you've guessed, developed by Hyperial. Those are a bit of an odd for a developer. All I could find out about them was that they developed the Amiga version of this and no other game, so it must have been an in-house thing, probably to avoid tax laws. I might be completely wrong there, so don't quote me on that one. This came out in 1994, which is 2 years after the original Desert Strike. Now, the original was an absolute stonker on the Amiga. It was one of EA's biggest selling games, so it's no surprise they would come up with a sequel. When it came out, it was £25.99. There was a few versions. There was the AGA, which I use mostly to prepare for this. CD32 edition, which I didn't get a chance to try, but I'm assuming it just have extended cutscenes and more music and stuff, but it'll be the same graphics. And an A500 version. Now, I was intrigued by this because I've been told that the AGA version was much improved, because it used the more power of, what's the right term, the AGA chip to give better visuals. Now, when I went back to the Amiga 500 version, it's okay, but it is pretty clunky looking and it's not the greatest. And I'm glad I ended up with the 1200 version because it's much, much better. Now, the coder behind all this was a chap called Stuart Johnson. Now, some of the games he did before were Never Ending Story, Virus. I think that's an interesting one. That's like a 3D landscape that you fly over. And, great game, Yogi's Big Cleanup. I have no idea what that's like, but I'm tempted to go and look it up. It sounds interesting. The graphics were done by a guy called Dave Garrison, who, from all I could tell, had only done Dennis before on the Amiga. Music-wise, it was filled out by Paul Tankard. What an awesome name. He had also worked on Dennis, a game called Suburban Commando. Now, this was one of the original games which actually I had as a demo disc, which I kept for almost a year whilst I was trying to convince my parents to get me an Amiga. I was a very, very strange child. But I was absolutely obsessed with this as a game, and when I finally got my A600 and I played that demo to death, I ended up buying the full game, I think, eventually. I might have got a pirate of it, very, very dodgy behaviour. But it was truly terrible, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I can't remember any of the music. He also was involved in F1 World Championship. Now, having a quick look at that, it looked a bit like the Nigel Mansell game, so I'm not sure how that... I think that was an A500 packing as well, or was it the A600? It was the A600 packing. I think it's that one, but I might be wrong. It was released at the same time as Urban Strike on the Mega Drive. Now, you got to remember that that's the third game in the series, so they were really churning these out quickly. Now, strangely, Urban Strike didn't come out on the Amiga. I don't know why. Jungle Strike is as far as it went. Now, Stuart Johnson, from what I read in interviews, he tried to make this one, he wasn't really involved in the first, but he tried to make this game more faithful to the Mega Drive. One of the things he did was try to make it run more smoothly, and I've had a look at a few comparison videos where the two are running side by side, and the Amiga version is just so much better. They really do take advantage of the extra memory and the speed and so on and the way it looks, so I think he achieved that. Even the A500 one moves pretty well. Now, the original guy who did the Mega Drive games, Mike Posen, I still can't pronounce that properly, he only ever did the first 2 Mega Drive games, and then other companies and people came along and ported them over and did different versions and things. But he has actually said in an interview that Jungle Strike was his favourite of all the Civ, because he played the lot even though he wasn't involved in the later games, just because of its design and the improvements it made and that sort of thing. When Jungle Strike came out, it was not a big seller. Like, the first one was everywhere, top in sales charts for like 30, 40 weeks or something ridiculous like that. I'm just clawing at memories there. But one of the biggest reasons, and he put this down, Mike Posen, that EA just didn't put their marketing muscle behind it. You know, they weren't pushing this as like a AAA game. And I think probably the reason for this at the time is EA were going more down the sports route as a company. They were pushing, like things like FIFA and the golf and baseball and basketball and things like that, and hockey, and they were really coming up with these huge, big. Well, they're still going to this day with these massive franchises, and I think at this time they were starting to drift away. I mean, Jungle Strike is one of the later, if not the last, of the Amiga games. You know, they've pretty much given up on the market at this point. I think the only other title that came out, I'm dragging up memories. I think it was a PGA Golf might be the CD32. I should have looked that up. I never even thought about it. But, you know, Jungle Strike was one of the last releases. They've moved away. They were focusing on sports, but it's whether or not is it actually a worthy game. The story of this is quite simple. It's all about revenge. A bit of a story spoiler here, but in the first game, you end up killing General Kilbaba, and in this one, Kilbaba, what an awesome name. His son has come back. He wants revenge, but he doesn't care really against who, and I think he's got involved with some a local drug lord or something, and they're now working together to build nuclear weapons. It's a bit over the top, and the humour is just about on par with the first game. It's very silly, and it's very over Americanized, and super powerful weapons, and, you know, we're gonna stop all this from happening. I don't know, it's like it's jingoistic almost. It's very, very peculiar. Now, graphically, of course, this is I play the improved AGA version to every other system, because this is 93, 94 when this was out. The Amiga is by far the best looking version. I mean, there's much more. You can tell, you just go and look at some videos. There's lots of comparison videos on YouTube, for example, but there's much better colours on the Amiga. That, you know, it fills out better. The graphics are just incredible in some instances, because, I mean, everything's just much more clearly defined. The forests look fantastic. The backgrounds look great. All the vehicles have just improved, say, compared to the first game especially. One of the biggest changes is that the display where you see everything, you're looking at the helicopter or your vehicle, and you've now got a text readout which just slides across the bottom of the screen, and that's just very simple things like which the first game didn't do. Like, if you finished a mission in the first game, you'd have to go to the map screen and look for it to say mission complete, or for the icon to disappear. But at least on this one, it's much easier, because it just flashes up a quick mission message saying mission complete, so you can then wander on to the next one. But, well, I suppose you can, but at the same time, most of the time, you've got to look at the map again just to work out where you're going. Another improvement is the weapons have moved from one side to the other, and whereas before I think it's left to right, and whereas before it just had, like, say, it had Hydra or gun, chain gun, now it has a picture of the actual weapon type, which is much, much better, because, you know, in the heat of battle, when you're quickly trying to flick through weapons and stuff, it's much easier just to notice an icon than to read a full word, even if it only takes that brief second to look away. It's just that glance which catches you, and this works a lot better. The map screen has been vastly improved. There's now, I think before it was just like pictures, very simple with a map screen. Now they didn't have pictures. Now they put pictures in, and pictures of the buildings up close, and is much more descriptive in the boxes, and it just works generally better. The weapon readouts and stuff are just about the same. It doesn't really change anything there. The controls for this, when you play it with joystick, the first game did not have a second button use, but Jungle Strike does. Now, I would hope that it would either change weapons or flick to the menu by tapping it, but sadly all it does is, or all it would do with my controller, is move the copter forward, which isn't too bad, because if you're shooting, you can hold that and then just tap shoot as you're flying along, whereas before, with just a single button, you're stuck on the spot, spinning away, and you can't really move, but it's not really much use. This should have, this is the Amiga's capable of having multi-button controls, and that should at the very least be an option. One of the biggest problems with the first game is it was always difficult, and it added to the challenge really, is finding armor dotted throughout the world, and you just have to go and get crates and stuff. And one of the other side things is you would rescue like hostages or lost pilots, people missing in action. You drop them off at a base, you get some points for it, and that was just about it. But at least in this game, they've changed it, so now when you take somebody back, you actually get armor, which does actually help, but from what I could work out from all the time I was playing it and from the map screen, the armor collections just seem to have disappeared. I don't know if I was being blind and stuff or just picking up weapons and stuff, but it's just handier that way, because there's so many more people and part of missions to rescue and stuff. At least you get a decent reward, and your armor is effectively your life bar. There's a lot more lives. I think you get 12 lives this time round. Obviously when you run it, I think it was 3 before, so that's definitely different. One of the other biggest changes is this time round there's multiple vehicles. You're not just restricted to the copter. The vehicles there's a hovercraft, a motorbike, and an F-117, which is like a stealth plane, which sort of looks like an arrow. That also comes with unlimited ammo. I think it has armor as well. One of the other greatest things about this, and I suppose because it is called Jungle Strike, is the jungle environments, when you get to them, do absolutely look fantastic, The way the scrolling moves and everything, the trees are well defined, and the ground and the foliage and all that, it just looks absolutely amazing, especially compared to the first game when it was just all desert. This way, this game, they really do go overboard with it, and there's lots of different environments. You've got things like snow areas, mountainous regions, lots and lots of different places to visit, and there's things like the sea, because you can take your hovercraft out on. One of the other fun things about this is they've really increased the number of missions, whereas before there was just 5 big missions in an area, 5 mission areas, and then that would be break down into little side missions throughout each. With this one, there's 9 full levels this time, with the same before, multiple little missions to do as you're wandering around. I mean, just a couple off the top of my head. One of my favourite ones is you have to stop the assassination of the president who's driving around in his limo, and it's absolutely chaotic because you're following him down the roads and stuff, and you've got to be quick on the trigger finger, and they're it's very, very difficult. Another one where you have to use the hovercraft to take out, I think they're like nuclear submarines, and you have to use like mines and stuff and shoot them from a distance, and it's actually quite difficult because they've got pretty good aim and you're a bit rubbish. And another good thing, of course, is it's got very satisfying explosions. Everything responds well. The sound effects are spot on. The weapons have that nice click to them, or again, all that pow and bang and whoosh, what you'd expect from good explosions in games. So it's pretty decent sound effects. One thing I did notice, and probably the biggest moan I had with Desert Strike, is the load time was just horrendous. I think just to get through to the first mission took 7 or 8 minutes, and I'm probably over moaning that, but when you try to film footage for something, he's trying to prepare and do test runs and demos and stuff, and you have to wait all that time for it to load. I mean, luckily I've realised later I was using an emulator, you can do a save state at least and just jump straight to it, but on this one, it's not too bad. It's just a few minutes this time. To me, that's quite fast loading. So they must have taken notice at the time, because it's on the same amount of discs, and they've really gone overboard. The game is very, very similar to the first one in the sense of design and style. It's that isometric, it's like 2.5D. I don't know how else to describe it. But of course, I do have my complaints about it. One of the biggest problems I have with this game, I mean, I really did enjoy playing it, but it took a good while compared to the first one to take off. And I think that's because when you start the game, you're in Washington, D.C., and the level that you get presented with, I mean, you've got like Washington monuments, what you have to save, and you've all missions based around them, but it's basically a city level, and it's well, to say it's a city level, it's just a few simple like square and rectangular buildings dotted around, and lots of green areas, so it's not exactly matching a real world location, but it's just so boring. I mean, there's nothing exciting. The first game, it felt like you were jumping right into a war zone. You know, you had to plan your level out properly and think around what you're going to do. But with this, you know, you're just flying straight around this boring looking city. I mean, there's no music playing, so you're reliant completely on the sound effects and that. So, I mean, I find that odd that there was no actual music, and they must have really crammed it all into, to get the game. But again, it just does not compare to Desert Strike. And one of the biggest problems with that is, for that layout is, and I don't understand why they did it, is it's like it's a, well, kind of in the sense that it's a dull but grid design. Later on, when you get to like the jungles and the mountains and the snow, it's all wild and spread out and it's fantastic. But that first opening level, I mean, this is what everyone's going to see before they play. You know, you can't skip, unless you've got cheats or codes or something, you can't skip on to the second level of beyond that. And then you think maybe this should have just been plonked in the middle, or it should have been shortened, or I mean, now I'm not happy either way. I either want more levels or I want less, but what I want is more levels that are more fun, and this is just disappointing, especially again compared to the opening of the first game, which just threw you straight in there, was a lot of fun. This is just a bit of a grind, and I'm always very happy when I manage to get past it, because once you get past that, it's like the game just opens up and becomes what it should have been. One of my other issues I had with the first game is there was no HUD, so you have to keep banging F10 on the keyboard. Now, the controls in the sequel are pretty much identical, which is a bit disappointing in itself, as I said about with the controllers before, with the joystick. But this time, you know, they could have changed this because they've put a text reader on, but there's still like no fuel or armor reading on the screen. That would have been nice and simple, and the fact that they've got a text screen there shows they can do it. Every so often you'll get like you've got low fuel or you'll got low armor, and it'll flash up on the bottom, which is handy. But the original did that as well, but doesn't give you a figure. So again, you have to it's pausing every time to check something out in an action game, and that part doesn't really doesn't really work. When it comes to the other vehicles, I mean, I can understand why they included them, because they wanted to do something different and stretch the game out. But my problem with them is they all control terribly. The motorbike, I think they're trying to emulate a real-world vehicle, but, you know, you start off slow, and as you move on, it starts getting quicker and quicker and faster and faster. And the great part, you know, and you get to swing out mines and stuff, and there's some levels which are sort of based around them, which is okay, but it's just so clunky, and it doesn't really work. The hovercraft is, I mean, I enjoyed the submarine mission, but again, I felt it was too fast for its own good. I didn't really enjoy controlling that, and I was like looking forward to getting back in the copter. The stealth fighter is an absolute waste of time, even with like the unlimited weapons. The thing is, you can't control them. The game had this, it's like it has this weird auto aim, and it's not always 100% accurate. And in the copter, it's not too bad, because you can like back up and swing forward, and it sort of works. But the thing is, with a plane, because it's always, you know, it can't hover, so it's having to constantly keep moving. So you're having to swoop round in massive circles to take things on, but it's incredibly fiddly but then really slow at the same time. So you just end up circling something at speed while they're all like firing at crazy like you, trying to like drop your bombs on it and your missiles and stuff. And it's just very, very awkward. And again, you think, oh, I should be back in the copter. And I think, you know, the vehicles are pretty useless, but beyond the missions that are designed specifically to accept them, they just don't work well at all, and it's just a bit of a shame. But again, the sad part is you do get forced to use them sometimes, so what can I say? Another thing I had with it, the difficulty is very, very strange. Let's say the first level is just boring. It's not overly difficult. It takes a bit to get through. Sort of, when you get up to the bit with the presidential limo, I mean, they have like spot on, way over the top fire capability, and you've got to be really on your toes there. It's incredibly tough, and then you get to the next next mission, and it just seems to calm down, the next level. And I understand that to a point, but this points again, it just spikes. It's really, really difficult, and it drops away, and it's like there's this weird. It's like a steep learning curve. You get past it and then it drops down. You think, well, this isn't too bad. And then it goes back up. It gets really, really difficult. And then you end up stuck or struggling. And 12 lives seems like a lot, but it's not, especially if you're like driving the plane or something, because that thing is so difficult to control. And that's the other problem. Every time you hit something, and I know a real world plane wouldn't do that, but this is a game, but every time you hit something, you blow up. And you lose a life on it. You don't like eject or anything. You just explode. And when you first get the plane, it's just like this. You try to learn how to use it, and you can blow yourself up before like 30 seconds have gone by. It's just silly. And the motorbike again, it doesn't have the high spot as the high spot. That regard to deaths, it's not as difficult to die in that thing, but again, because of the controls and the way it is to use, it just puts me off. And again, the biggest issue with all of this, and this should have done something about it, but why is there no in-game music? I mean, this is the Amiga, it's capable of so much, and there is bits like for the menu and the cutscenes and stuff, which is fantastic, but they could have thrown something and give you an option. Maybe stuck an extra disc in. I don't know. Maybe they were just short on space. It's a problem though, and it doesn't help when you try to come up with good points for this game, and I really want to love some sort of music, and the artist behind the stuff, before he's more than capable of it. They could have just given him something. I mean, again, this is the Amiga. We expect better. Now, the mags at the time gave this some, I think these are mixed reviews, but of all the ones I could find, the one gave it 86%, CU Amiga 85%, Amiga Power, which seemed to be the go-to one mostly for the more honest reviews, I think, they gave it 77%, a magazine called Amiga Concept 49%, which I thought was very, very interesting, but they're very mixed, really. Nothing's ever high. I mean, a few of the others did do like a year or two after this. I think they were re-reviewing things just to make space because the Amiga was dead by this point. It was so late in the life. But they all seem to drop it massively by 10%. 10%. I think in some cases it was hitting like high-end 60s. So, I mean, I can understand the review straight away. I mean, when you play Desert Strike, the first one, it was only 2 years old by that point, and then you come on to this. It is not a bad game by any means necessary whatsoever. It's a fine game on its own. As a separate game, as a copter game, you can enjoy it massively. But the problem is, it's very disappointing. You had all that awesomeness. You've got the same engine. You've got similar abilities, but for me, it just didn't gel. It needed a lot more. I mean, Desert Strike it's become one of my all-time favourite Amiga games. I will start sticking that in my best of lists from now on because I've had so much fun with it. It's so involving, the action's great, the humour's great, it all just works perfectly. Jungle Strike, it's okay. I mean, I don't think it's a worthy sequel. It shouldn't have been, it's almost Virgin on average. It just shouldn't have these problems. Graphically, it's a lot better. It looks fantastic. I mean, it is one of EA's last, and I can understand why they released this onto the Amiga because the first one was so popular. But the other side of it is, it feels a lot more action orientated compared to the original, where you could really plan your missions out like that. You weren't just like praying and hoping, and you were when it was getting hectic. But with this one, the planning doesn't really work because it's a lot more fast paced. The enemies have got much better aim, they respond quicker, and I think to some degree that works against it. You can't be slow and plodding and take your time. You've got to run and gun, slide in there straight away, and then come out, and that's the biggest difference. Whereas Desert Strike just about has it spot on. This really does struggle in parts, and I don't know, maybe it was just down to the development time. I feel like it just could have done with a bit more editing around the edge. Because again, this is not a bad game. It's worth playing just to see where they were going with the Strike series. And it's annoying that they never brought out Urban Strike. Because, I mean, on the Mega Drive, I played that and I quite enjoyed what they've done with the vehicles and the missions and stuff. But again, that's the Mega Drive. It's not the Amiga. Even though the Amiga was more than capable of it, give it another 12 months, they could have ported it over and done another version again. They just didn't. So we're stuck with Jungle Strike, and this is as good as it gets. Basically, it's just not a worthy sequel. I would have expected better, but they could have done better if we just didn't get Urban Strike. So I think that's as good a time as any to finish. As you can probably tell, I am extremely disappointed in that game. I was expecting so much more after the awesomeness of the first one. But yeah, we'll end it there. I would say if you want to play this, play Desert Strike first. You'll have a lot more fun, and then maybe go on to this as a curiosity. But just beware, it's not as good as it should be. As always, guys, thanks for listening. If you have any comments or queries or there's games you want me to cover, then either pop over to AMIGArama on Facebook or go to AMIGArama.com, leave a comment, or even drop me an email. It's Lorfarius@AMIGArama.com. I will reply. I'm sure there's lots of things I could cover that would interest you. I mean, I'm focusing on games at the moment, but there's bound to be other things out there. I mean, eventually I would like, it probably sounds quite boring, but I'd love to do something on utilities, because I don't really have much experience beyond the odd word processing on the Amiga back in the day, but there must be tons of stuff out there that's worth going back to. Anyway, I'd be glad to hear your comments, and I look forward to them. Till next time, guys.